Welcome to the webinar that will explore Langley's arc of development. I'm Elinor Scully, the head of school, and I'm joined this afternoon by Phil Patru, our assistant head of school. And we are excited to walk you through the webinar and explain a little bit about Langley's arc of development. We talk a lot at Langley about the arc of development as one of the signature things we provide as part of our school experience. And we wanted to spend today talking a little bit about the arc, why it matters, and what you can expect at Langley. In the interest of full disclosure, that charming picture of the chef over there is, that's me in the chef's hat, and I'm with Phil. This is a Halloween celebration, which we're gearing up for again at Langley. But just the voices you will hear are depicted in that charming Halloween photo, and I think the kids behind are looking a little frightened, but mostly they're having a great time. At Langley, we are a preschool through 8th grade school by design and intention. We'll talk about that a little bit today. We are a day school located in McLean, Virginia. 51% of the students at Langley are girls and 49% are boys. 38% of the families that enroll their children at Langley identify as being diverse in some way, and we are really proud of that statistic. We also have a roughly 7-to-1 student-teacher ratio. So this is an environment where there's a lot of one-on-one attention for students. And we really would put at the center of our mission and philosophy a very powerful student-teacher-parent partnership that guides all we do as part of our educational mission. We have been spending a lot of time at Langley talking about Langley's arc of development. And what that suggests is that we believe that there is incredible growth that occurs between preschool and grade 8. And if you look at this arc before you, you see how steep and complex that line of growth and development is. And our program and curriculum is designed to bring expert teachers to an environment where we focus in a very developmentally nuanced way on the growth of children starting when they're 3 going all the way through 8th grade. And the arc has kind of a slightly narrow band, meaning we are an admission selective school. So if you were in another school, there would probably be a wider band of students that are part of the community, but we do have admission standards, and so we are selective. But what we recognize is that within that band, and by hiring expert teachers who are really developmental experts in whether it's kindergarten or 4th grade, we can deliver a pretty unique program. What does that look like along the arc? Well, what we know is that there are predictable milestones that children achieve cognitively, socially, and emotionally as they grow from preschool through 8th grade. And we build a curriculum and teaching expertise that responds to those predictable milestones. So for instance, at 3rd grade, we know exactly what average 3rd graders are going to go through with regard to their mathematical, analytical reasoning skill development, where they are with regard to literacy, how they're developing their confidence and social capacity, and what's going on with them emotionally. And our teachers are sophisticated in responding to a 3rd grade class along those predictable milestones. Simultaneously, we understand that every child is unique, and their journey along the arc is not the same as their peer or maybe a sibling in the family. There are peaks where their cognitive growth just goes through a tremendous growth spurt, and there are valleys where it levels off. There are plateaus where for a period of time they're not necessarily learning a great deal, but our teachers are highly attuned and deliver individualized instruction that responds to those peaks and valleys. So if a young person is about to have a pretty big growth spurt around logical reasoning, our teachers are there to push materials and exercises to them that will challenge them and stretch them in that period of growth. And if they hit a valley where they're struggling, we can also scaffold their learning around that valley so that they get the individualized attention to maximize their potential. So that arc, while fluid in design, acknowledges that there are some peaks and valleys along the way, and our expert teachers are there to provide the kind of instruction and learning environment that will maximize the growth and development of every single student. And then we are able, of course, to deploy these developmental experts at various parts of the arc. So, for instance, our preschool teachers have a very nuanced understanding of what it means to be 3 and to come to school for the first time. And then our JK teachers know exactly what's different a year later when they're in a JK classroom getting ready to do more sophisticated work. Why does all of this matter? Well, it matters because if you can offer your child this kind of very specialized learning environment, you can do a couple of things. It allows us to capitalize on cognitive growth spurts. So when a student is in an environment, a small class environment with a very skilled and expert teacher, when that moment of cognitive growth or emotional growth happens, we are ready to push that and to take full advantage of it. It also means we can scaffold the instruction for maximum impact. Again, in a small classroom, when you're at a moment where reading is really moving, a student is really growing in fluency or comprehension, we can push them to the next level of book or help their writing exceed to the next level because we're there to provide that one-on-one, individualized, scaffolded instruction that will allow their growth to happen in a way that's right for them. This kind of nutrient-rich environment where there's such a focus on developmental growth and capacity allows us to evoke curiosity, creativity, and imagination. So these are classrooms that fold in the kinds of activities that employ hands-on learning, group work, collaboration, a lot of dynamism, so that we are really pulling the learning experience into the classroom in a way that's joyful and engaging for kids. Our ARC also allows us to build social and emotional stamina. And that's important for kids because so much of what happens in school is cognitive, but it's also emotional with regard to peers and friendships. And we want to give them skills to understand their emotions, to build productive social relationships, to be a member of a community in a classroom where they can exhibit their strengths and get support on their weaknesses. And we want them through school to feel like they can do school and they can build productive relationships and have some grit around their own capacity. Our ARC also allows us to get a lot of information early on about who a student is in terms of their learning profile. So there's an ability to diagnose if a student is going to have some difficulty with some aspect of their academic journey. We can get at that early and we can do some targeted interventions and supports to help us understand and help a family understand, okay, is this just a kind of typical bump in the road or is there something more beyond that? We have students that come to us that have issues with processing speed or working memory, and some of that comes from our experience with them in the classroom and being able to give their parents some insight into how they learn. All of us, every student has a unique and diverse learning profile for who they are, and this arc of development allows a family and a student to come to understand that unique learning profile and take full advantage of it along the way. And finally, we think that this approach to education, knitting together the academic with the social and emotional, promotes agility and adaptability in our students. We want them to be drivers of their own learning. Ultimately, by the time they get to 8th grade and they leave us, they're going to go off to some of the best high schools in this country, and we want them to be agile and adaptable, to understand how they learn best, to self-advocate, and to be able to think for themselves about the kind of learning environment that's really going to be right for them. And we start building that, believe it or not, when they come to us at age 3. And for the veteran teachers that have been around for a long time, when those students graduate at 8th grade, it's really a moment of great celebration to see how much they've grown and how much they've accomplished. Why else does this matter? You notice that our ARC stops intentionally at 8th grade, and we have done that by design. I mentioned that at the start of this webinar. We believe passionately that there are certain unique benefits and values of a preschool through 8th grade education that you don't get in a high school environment or in a K-12 environment. We were really excited recently because on NPR there was a news piece where they reported on a major study that was conducted looking at the benefits of K-8 schools. And for us, we've always known that there are really important benefits to our preschool through 8th grade model, but now there's a really sophisticated scientific research study that supports that. And what we've seen and what we know is that there's a real benefit to having the oldest group in the school be our middle school students. Middle school is a time of tremendous transition and growth, and we find that when they are sandwiched between an elementary school and a high school, sometimes the middle school years get lost. They can feel particularly stressful for students because they're looking ahead to those older students. And what we know now is that actually when the middle school students are the oldest students in the school, they actually have a different kind of confidence, they do better in school, and they adopt a different kind of leadership posture. And then when they go off to high school, they're ready. So this study really emphasized that idea that by allowing our middle school students to be the oldest, they have a different kind of maturity and a different kind of success rate. So what can you expect at Langley? This arc of development and all of these principles that I've just discussed are embedded into our curriculum. So our curriculum is designed to reflect this scaffolded approach to learning and growth. It's embedded in our classroom instruction so that the way we teach students reflects that diversity of the arc and that nuanced understanding of the cognitive, the social, and the emotional. How we use time throughout the day and where we put activities and how we build a student's movement through a school day reflects this developmental approach to thinking about where they are. And then it really affects who we hire. We are not hiring people that necessarily are subject matter experts and care only about mathematics. We are hiring people who are experts, teachers of mathematics at particular stages of development. And then finally, we gear all of our professional development to developing that kind of expertise. So I'm going to pass the webinar over to our assistant head of school, Phil Petru, who's going to tell you a little bit more about what this looks like in the classroom.
Thank you. So at Langley, we believe in an inquiry-based learning approach, which we feel falls really nicely with the arc of development and how kids learn. So for those of you who don't know what inquiry-based learning is or looks like, what it is that we believe that kids are curious and that they want to continue learning. And it's not about putting kids in front of a teacher or at a desk and just having them hear information and then regurgitate it or give it back. It's about them really having really strong, essential questions that allow kids to foster their curiosity, to do research, to be engaged, and to actually do something with what they're learning. And this slide shows some examples along a kid's learning from preschool up to grade 8 of what things they might be looking at our school. So at grade 8, what the different genres convey to my audience is something that they would dive into, they would debate, they would research, they would look at different examples. From something all the way down to preschool, how can we respect and care for our world? It's something that they might do differently. They might have that during dramatic play. They might have that during a field trip. They might find different things. The great thing about essential questions is that though you can ask certain questions at a preschool age, how can we respect and care for our world? But that's a question that we could actually ask again in 3rd grade, or we could ask again in 8th grade, but then have different outcomes and different discussions based upon how kids are learning and where they are with it. So what does this look like in terms of examples of the arc in action? So for a preschooler, that could be a structured time of dramatic play where they're negotiating and collaborating and working with kids in a sensory station. Or they might be doing a dinosaur dig where they're out on our campus and they're actually looking at artifacts and working together in teams and coming back and trying to make sense of what their learning is. Up to maybe in 3rd grade where they've just learned about sugar and its effects of sugar, but then debate, is chocolate milk healthy? And they have that argument or that debate. Up to 8th grade where you get more complex, where they might be learning about Syrian refugees and whether the United States should accept Syrian refugees, but then coming to their own answer on that and then challenge to maybe think and debate and support the other side of an argument. So all along the way, we're looking at really meaningful, essential questions that invoke that curiosity of kids, that support kids in their learning, and that challenge them to engage in their learning, but also do something with the information that they have.
Thanks, Phil. That work that we do is really collaborative, and Phil leads those conversations with our senior administrative team, with the department heads, and then with the teachers. So this kind of reflection on all of these pieces is really embedded in all the work we do as a learning community of adults as well. The social and emotional part of the arc is something that we have been spending a great deal of time fleshing out and making more robust. And the reason for that is that we know that in order for students to maximize their intellectual growth, their cognitive development, and ultimately their academic achievement in school, they have to be in a social and emotional place to be able to learn at their maximum potential. So if you're a middle school student and you walk into a classroom and you've just had a difficult interaction with a friend on the bus on the way into school, and you've got math first period, if you're worried about what's going on with your friendship group or your peer groups or something you saw online last night, you're not going to be free to learn algebra fully. And so what we know is that in order to really ensure the achievement intellectually of our student population, we also have to give them really important social and emotional competencies to navigate life. And again, lots of compelling research on this. You've probably read and heard a lot about this in the news. This idea that when we give kids social and emotional skill development, they are not only more successful in school, but they're more successful and more well-adjusted in life. And obviously that's our end game. So what we do at Langley is we scaffold the social and emotional work of our student population, starting in preschool all the way through grade 8, around certain core areas. So we want them to be emotionally intelligent. So we work on skills of emotional intelligence, emotional regulation, understanding their emotions, identifying the emotions of others, and working empathetically with others. We also work on developing their multicultural competence. We live in an increasingly global and interconnected world, and we want our students to be able to understand cultural differences and to behave respectfully and productively with lots of different kinds of people. And again, we know that intellectually and academically, they are more sophisticated and thoughtful learners when they are able to adopt multiple points of view. And finally, we really work on their competence around the areas of health and wellness. Kids need to eat well, they need to get sleep, they need to develop positive, constructive social relationships that are going to be life-enhancing. And so we do a lot on the health and wellness side of the coin to ensure that they are developing these capacities. We believe at Langley that academic achievement goes hand in hand with this social and emotional learning. We don't think you have to choose one over the other. And so this arc that you've seen us describe throughout this webinar really capitalizes on building both dimensions of this coin, the academic and intellectual, right alongside the social and emotional. Also, what we know is that if we do this well, by the time that the students reach eighth grade, they are unique. Our eighth graders, when we get data on them, when they come from the schools to which they matriculate for high school, they arrive with real confidence, a real sense of inner strength and capacity. They are uncommonly optimistic and grounded. They're poised. They're kind, but they're sophisticated learners and thinkers. And this arc is what gets them there. It's the arc attended to by these dynamic teachers in partnership with their parents that allows them to become self-aware and self-confident and to be able to go off to many different types of high schools that are right for them and to take new risks, to try new things, to make new friends. And again, what's neat about this for us is that when a student is 5 or 6 years old, we don't know what kind of high school is going to be the right match for them. But by the time they're in 8th grade, they've maximized our curriculum, and then they make with their parents a really defined choice about what the right next step is for them. And that's, again, by design. We want them to get to a place where they might pick a school that focuses on science and technology. They might pick a school that has an arts focus. They might pick a single gender school because they're ready for that kind of environment. So again, we believe this arc, when fully realized, creates a graduate that has some fairly unique attributes. So in summary, we believe that if you get the foundation right, anything and everything is possible. And we devote extraordinary resources in terms of our people and our program to developing expertise around this arc so that our middle school graduate is a unique and capable human being who can go off and do all kinds of things in high school. And again, along the way, get a very unique educational experience. We know that a webinar that's half an hour long does not yield nearly enough time for us to showcase all the unique things that Langley has to offer. So there are some moments for you to get to know us better, and I would encourage you to come to one of our information sessions. Our next one is on October 21st at 9 a.m. You can also schedule a tour with our admission office, which is another way to get on campus and find out some great information. But I think what we'll do is we'll use the last few minutes of the webinar to do some questions. And I'm going to take a look. I have an ability, I think, to be able to take a quick look and see what your questions are. And the first one is, teachers are the backbone of the classroom. You've addressed who you hire and your strong interest in their professional development. How do you assess the efficacy of the teaching? Well, that's a terrific question. One of the things that we do, and actually maybe I'll let Phil talk about this because he's done such a terrific job of putting this model in play for us. So Phil, why don't you tell them a little bit about how we think about feedback and teacher development?
Great. So at Langley, we've taken a real deep look at how we give feedback to our faculty. Traditionally, and we take this very seriously, that one of the most, if not the most important thing for kids' achievement is the quality of their teacher. And our faculty have been craving to understand what good teaching is and how they're doing. So what we do at Langley is we offer what's called a Marshall method of evaluation and feedback, where we have our instructional leadership team in classroom quite frequently, every 15 to 20 days, in there looking and working with teachers for approximately 10 to 15 minutes at a time and giving immediate feedback in terms of the strengths and areas of growth with faculty, which allows us then to work very closely in articulating and planning our professional development in terms of where we want our teachers and our faculty to go.
And what we love about this model, of course, is that teachers who are so incredibly hardworking crave the opportunity to reflect in partnership with someone on what works. And what we find in these conversations that's so, I think, energizing is that it's truly a conversation. And they get into the really nitty-gritty, sort of the art of the profession. How could I have done that differently? How might I have engaged more students? Are there ways that we could have done that lesson to greater effect? And so teachers love the opportunity to reflect critically on their work. It's what they're doing with their students, and this gives them a way to continue their own growth and renewal. Another question. Hang on, let me find my mouse. Sorry. This question is, this is a great question. When a teacher identifies learning needs or growth points that may be individual to the student's personal arc, how do the teachers work together and work with the parents to support this learning point? Will we as parents get information about that? That's a terrific, terrific question. So again, one of the things, without exception, our teachers work in grade level teams. So there's time built into the day for our teachers to meet with one another. So for instance, they will have time weekly to get together to talk about what they're teaching and their unit design, but they also spend a great deal of time talking about how students are doing. So if a homeroom teacher is seeing something unique going on with a particular student's learning, they will give that feedback to the specialists, to the people that are, to our reading specialists, to our math specialists, to the art, music, drama. All of those people will get that information. So there is a shared conversation about student learning. And then what you're getting in an independent school environment is a lot of regular communication between the classroom and parents. So we would pick up the phone and call a parent. If we saw something really exciting happening, a lot of parents would get a phone call saying, hey, we've noticed that your child is really making tremendous strides in this particular area. And we would also, similarly, if we were worried about something, be in touch. We also have days that we devote to parent-teacher conferences, getting people into, teachers in to visit with the teachers one-on-one and learn in a pretty nuanced way exactly what we're seeing in the classroom. And then again, there's just a lot of feedback through written reports, narrative kinds of feedback. But we really do try to keep open channels of communication. Another question. In public schools, there seems to be such a delineation of who the smart kids are and who those who are not. When you have students hitting their valleys and plateaus, how do you address this in the classroom so they aren't feeling singled out in some way? That's a terrific question. And that, again, is the beauty of our environment. When I'm talking about scaffolding a peak or a valley, this is very subtle work. We don't track kids. We don't put them in high and low reading and math groups. A skilled teacher who has 15 students in a classroom knows how to design an activity so that someone can get a challenge and someone can get support. All of that happens within the same classroom so that no one's getting kind of pulled out or singled out, because the reality is everybody has peaks and valleys. And again, because we have an admission selective criteria, the kids are falling within a pretty predictable range. Not every child is the same, but within that range, we know how to differentiate an activity or a challenge so that that student can get the push that they need without feeling any different than anybody else that's sitting alongside of them. And then there's one more question. Let me see if I can get to that. And that is, how many different teachers might my child interact with daily? That's an awesome question. It sort of depends on the age of that child. So for instance, middle school student is going to see a lot of different teachers in a given day because we're getting them ready for high school. So they're going to have a math teacher, a social studies teacher, a language arts teacher, a PE teacher, coach, drama, music, theater, all of that. So they will interact with a lot of different people. In our primary school, the children spend most of their time with their two teachers, their lead teacher and the assistant teacher in the classroom. And then we have specialists who come in and push in. But again, with early learners who are, this is their first school experience, we want them to be in a very intimate environment and for those specialists to come into their classroom. And then as kids grow up and grow older throughout the arc, that increasing independence as they move to middle school means a little more, like our 5th graders, for instance, are getting ready for middle school. So they rotate a little bit and they see different teachers along the way. So it's geared toward their stage of development. It's geared toward what we think makes sense from where they are cognitively and emotionally, but it gets increasingly more sophisticated and more independent as they age. And then I think we're going to just double check and see if there are any more questions. And we've got one more, and I think we have got enough time for it. We've encountered a similar junior kindergarten through 8th grade school that starts technology in the child's life. At what point do you introduce technology, and what does that use look like? That's a great question, and there's been a lot of interesting debate about, with very young children in particular, how much screen time they should have. And so in our, particularly in our primary school, they have the opportunity to use technology, but it's in a very targeted and specific way for projects. They're not on screens a lot during the day because we want them to be working on their fine motor. We want them to be getting their hands on things. We want them to be manipulating things so that their visual spatial reasoning is getting more sophisticated. We want them to be reading books and turning pages and doing art. So yes, our kids may engage an iPad, occasionally, but they're not going to do a lot of that in the primary school because we really want to get a handle on their physical, fine motor, and gross motor growth and development, and we don't want them on screens too much. As they age and they get older, technology is sort of held back and then introduced in a more targeted way. When our students get to middle school, they're using Chromebooks because they need to design research, they need to be savvy about how to evaluate sources and technology, they need to produce presentations and to be able to write and edit, and so obviously at that stage in the game we're preparing them for more sophisticated technology use. But with our young learners, we want them to be engaging the world around them with a great deal of curiosity and reflection, and we don't want them on screens too much, I think is the best summary. And I think with that, we've answered your questions. And some nice parent just wrote, "Thank you so much, have a great day," and I would return that to you. Thank you for spending some time with us at this webinar. It's been wonderful to give you a little bit of a sense of our school, and we really hope you'll come to campus and spend a little more time visiting us. Thank you again, and we hope to see you soon.